You certainly know the story of Adam and Eve, the first couple of human beings created by God to dwell in the Garden of Eden, as narrated in the Holy Scriptures. That story forms the basis of much of Western theology and morality, a tale of innocence, temptation, and downfall. Yet behind this widely accepted narrative lies an ancient and intriguing Jewish myth that dares to challenge the canonical version, offering a radically different perspective on humanity's origins. This primeval myth claims that before Eve, there was another woman, a figure of fierce independence and unbreakable will, whose name was Lilith. Unlike Eve, whose creation is described as having been fashioned from one of Adam's ribs, a detail that, for many, symbolizes her subordination or her role as man's complement, Lilith is said to have been created from the same primordial clay that gave rise to Adam. That equivalence in the raw material of her creation is the heart of the Lilith legend and the foundation of her claim to equality. To her, being formed from the same substance at the same moment implied an intrinsic position of parity, not inferiority. Because she was crafted directly by God, in the same way and from the same substance as Adam, Lilith refused to submit to her husband's wishes or demands. In an Eden where hierarchy was still taking shape, she judged herself to stand in absolute equality, with the same right to autonomy and dignity that Adam possessed. For that fundamental reason, Lilith would not allow herself to be dominated by Adam, resisting any attempt at imposition or subjugation within their relationship. Their disagreements arose largely from Lilith's refusal to accept a submissive position during sexual intercourse, insisting on a reciprocity Adam was unwilling to grant. Lilith and Adam dwelled in the Garden of Eden, a paradise of harmony and abundance. However, Lilith's intrinsic rebelliousness, her uncompromising quest for equality, and her refusal to yield to a subordinate position placed her in an untenable situation. The tension between the two became a clash of wills. She faced an existential choice: submit to her husband's desires and renounce her own identity, or leave the Garden of Eden, breaking with divine order and with the only other human being in existence. Lilith was unwilling to relinquish her independence, her freedom of choice, or her autonomy. Confronted with Adam's demands and the apparent lack of divine support for her stance of equality, she opted for exile. With an act of courage and defiance that would echo through millennia, Lilith decided to leave Adam and the Garden of Eden behind, abandoning paradise in search of her own freedom. The first woman departed from Eden and settled in a remote place, according to the myth, near the Red Sea. There, on the shores of mysterious waters and surrounded by spiritual entities and demons, she began a new existence, free from Adam's bonds but also removed from divine grace and from paradise. When God perceived Lilith's absence and Adam's loneliness, he, in his mercy and in an effort to restore order to his creation, sent 3 of his most prominent angels. The divine mission was clear: try to persuade Lilith to return to the Garden of Eden, so that the original harmony might be re-established. Yet Lilith's resolve was unshakable. She vehemently refused, turning her back not only on Adam's plea, but also on God's own will. Her answer was a challenge, a reaffirmation of her choice of freedom, even if that meant damnation. Without his original companion, Adam grew profoundly lonely. Paradise, however perfect it was, seemed empty without a partner's presence. Seeing that the man suffered because of this loneliness and seeking to complete his plan for humanity, God decided to create a new woman for him. And so Eve was created, not from clay but from one of Adam's ribs, with the implicit intention that she be his helper and companion, without Lilith's same rebellious independence. From her separation from the Creator and her refusal to submit to the divine and patriarchal order, Lilith's figure was gradually demonized throughout tradition. She ceased to be merely the first rebellious woman and was transformed into an evil entity, an archetype of untamed and dangerous femininity. She came to be considered a demon in the form of a woman, associated with the forces of night and acts of wickedness. In her demonic form, legend says that Lilith possessed the power to cause illnesses in newborn children, especially boys. It is believed that she sought revenge or simply acted out of malice, stealing babies' lives or bringing them harm. To shield children from this danger, popular Jewish traditions developed the use of special amulets. These amulets, often hung over cradles or worn by mothers, bore the names of the three angels, Senoi, Sansenoi, and Semangaloth, who had tried to bring Lilith back to Eden. Those names were believed to have the power to repel Lilith and protect newborns from her malevolent influence. Legends claim that Lilith felt an overwhelming envy of the happy and harmonious life Adam and Eve enjoyed in paradise, basking in divine closeness and mutual companionship. In an act of vengeance intended to ruin the couple that had replaced her, she is said to have taken the form of a serpent. In that treacherous guise, Lilith deceived Eve, seducing her into tasting the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge and offering the fruit to Adam as well. That act of disobedience led to the couple's expulsion from paradise, an event that, in this interpretation, would be a vengeance orchestrated by Lilith. It's important to emphasize that Lilith's story, although well known and present in many literary and cultural works, does not appear in the Christian Bible. Her narrative is found mainly in apocryphal texts and in Jewish Kabbalistic tradition. For this reason, her story is widely rejected by both Catholics and Protestants as part of divine revelation. Her absence from the central biblical texts contributed to her being marginalized or demonized by the dominant religions. The version in which Lilith was Adam's first wife, created on equal footing, is detailed more fully in medieval Jewish writings, such as the Alphabet of Ben Sirach, also known as the Alphabet of Sirach. The exact date when those texts were written is uncertain, but historians and scholars believe they were compiled between the years 700 and 1000 after Christ, already in the medieval era. It is a text of satirical and folkloric character, which adds a layer of complexity to its interpretation. However, Lilith's figure is not exclusive to Hebrew mythology. Her myth has far deeper and older roots, with parallels and influences across several Mesopotamian cultures. The Lilith myth is present in Babylonian, Sumerian, and Assyrian mythology, where she appears in varied forms. In those ancestral cultures, Lilith was often seen as a malevolent deity, a nocturnal demoness associated with winds and diseases who kidnapped children or seduced men. In other interpretations, or when identified with lunar aspects, she was viewed as a goddess who possessed many faces and therefore differing moods. Thus, she could be conceived both as a goddess of fertility, associated with life force and female power, and as a demonic figure, a representation of the chaotic and dangerous forces of nature, or of uncontrolled female sexuality. That duality is a striking characteristic of Lilith throughout history. Various theories claim that Lilith's absence from the canonical Bible was not due merely to chance, but to a deliberate decision. Some scholars suggest that her story was deliberately excluded during the councils and compilation processes that decided which books would become the biblical canon as we know it today. Lilith, as an independent, strong woman who refuses submission, fundamentally opposed the patriarchal and hierarchical structure upon which Judeo-Christian cultures rely, and which the Bible, in its traditional interpretation, reinforced. Including her would have undermined the narrative of female obedience and subordination, making her an uncomfortable figure. For that reason, and because of the strength of her resilience and quest for autonomy, Lilith's figure was embraced by the feminist movement, as well as by esoteric and neo-pagan currents starting in the 20th century. To some feminists, Lilith is not a demoness, but a powerful symbol of the woman who refuses to be subjugated. Besides being the first woman, she would also be the first feminist, the pioneer in the struggle against gender oppression, choosing exile over submission. The contemporary feminist movement maintains that Lilith was unjustly demonized, just as many women in our history who dared to oppose patriarchal dominance were silenced, marginalized, or vilified for challenging the norms of their time. Whether as a dark and demonic figure, a vestige of ancestral fears, or as a brilliant symbol of female struggle and independence, Lilith's story remains the object of great interest, study, and debate.